I had always thought of my bedroom as my safe place. I mean, after a long day of work or hanging out with friends, there's nothing better than flopping onto your bed, right? Just a space to lay back, read a little, and let the day melt away. I'm usually one of those people who can just knock out as soon as my head hits the pillow, but sometimes, on nights when I just can't get to sleep, I'll pick up a book. There's something about reading that calms my mind, you know? It's like I can fall into the pages and let go of all the noise in my head. Anyway, it was one of those nights, maybe around 12 a.m. or so. I was propped up in bed, just reading. I don't even remember the book now, but I do remember it was one of those thrillers that has you double-checking your doors and windows. So there I was, totally into the story, when I suddenly felt this tap on my shoulder. It was just one little tap, like someone lightly nudging me to get my attention. I froze. My first thought was that I was half asleep and probably imagining it. You know how sometimes when you're just about to drift off, you can feel like you're falling or someone's touching you? I brushed it off, telling myself it was just one of those moments, and went back to reading. But then, just a few seconds later, I felt the same tap again, this time on my other shoulder. My heart did this weird flip, like a drop on a roller coaster. Now, let me tell you, there's nothing that puts a chill down your body quite like feeling a tap on both sides of your body when you know there's no one there. I turned slowly to my right, trying to make sense of what was going on, but of course, nothing. Just the dim outline of my bedroom walls, the faint light from my bedside lamp casting shadows that seemed just a little too long and a little too deep. I glanced over my shoulder, feeling ridiculous but unable to get rid of the feeling that I wasn't alone. The room was dead silent. You could hear the faint sound of the fridge in the kitchen down the hall, but nothing else. No footsteps, no breathing, just stillness. It felt like the whole world had stopped. I took a deep breath, telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks. I mean, I'd had a long day, and maybe I was just tired or something, right? But just as I was settling back into my spot, gripping the book a little tighter than before, I felt it again. This time the tap was on the top of my shoulder, like a small but firm pat. And this time, it wasn't soft. It felt heavier, almost like a hand. Now, I don't know about you, but when you feel something like that, your brain goes into overdrive. I tried to keep calm, but there was this gnawing feeling creeping up my body, like something was seriously wrong. I knew I was alone. There was no one else in the house, and I hadn't heard any doors open or anything. I put the book down and rubbed my face, trying to wake myself up, telling myself I was just freaking out for no reason. But as soon as I put my hands down, I felt another tap, this time on my other shoulder. It was like someone was moving around me, playing some weird game, tapping one side and then moving to the other. I sat there, frozen, not really sure what to do next. It felt like my own room was turning against me, you know, like I was suddenly a stranger in a place I'd known my whole life. Every corner looked darker than it should. I thought maybe if I turned on the main light, it'd help me snap out of this weirdness. So I reached over to switch on my bedside lamp and swung my legs over the bed, ready to stand up. But just as my foot hit the floor, I felt it again. This time, it wasn't just a tap. It felt like fingers, cold and definite, grabbing my leg. I yanked my foot back up onto the bed like a kid afraid of monsters under the mattress. My heart was pounding so loud I swear it was echoing around the room. But I didn't move. I didn't even dare breathe for a second, just waiting to see if it would happen again. And then it did. A cold brush against my other shoulder, as if someone was deliberately trying to get my attention. At this point, I wasn't thinking logically anymore. I was just terrified. I slowly turned my head to look over my shoulder, practically holding my breath, half expecting to come face to face with something. But there was nothing there. just the empty room. My clothes tossed on the floor, the soft glow of my lamp, casting those same deep shadows across everything. I kept having the feeling, though, that something was watching me. You know that prickling feeling on the back of your neck? It was like that, but stronger, like an electric charge filling the room. I wanted to run out of there, maybe even leave the house altogether, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Instead, I just sat there, eyes darting around, waiting for, I don't know, some kind of sign. And then, right when I thought maybe it was over, I heard this faint whisper. It wasn't clear enough to make out words, but it sounded like someone was murmuring just inches from my ear. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My heart felt like it skipped a beat, and I actually flinched, whipping my head around to look. But there was still nothing there. It was like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like my whole body was on edge, like every nerve was lit up, ready to jump out of my skin. I didn't even think twice. I just got up, grabbed my phone and keys, and practically sprinted out of the house. The second I got outside, I could finally breathe, like the air was lighter or something. I jumped in my car, hands still shaking, and drove straight to my best friend's house. It was the only place I could think of where I'd feel remotely normal again. When she opened the door, I could barely get the words out. I must have looked like a complete mess, but she didn't even ask. She just let me in and sat me down, and I spilled the whole story, every weird, creepy detail. She just sat there, listening, eyebrows raised but not saying much. When I finally finished, she just looked at me, then nodded like it all made perfect sense. "Stay here tonight," she said, no hesitation. "We'll figure it out in the morning." I didn't argue. I crashed on her couch, still half expecting to feel that cold tap on my shoulder again, but it didn't come. Finally, as the exhaustion took over, I drifted off, knowing at least tonight I wasn't alone. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of my friend moving around in the kitchen. For a moment, lying there on her couch, I almost forgot about what had happened. Almost. But as soon as I sat up, it all came rushing back like a bad hangover of pure dread. I went to the kitchen and she handed me a mug without saying a word, just gave me this look like, "You good?" I shrugged, trying to play it off. We sat in silence for a bit, just sipping coffee, and then finally, she spoke up. "So, what do you think it was?" she asked, almost like she was talking about some wild movie we'd watched. Not my own messed up experience. I didn't know what to say. "I don't know," I mumbled. It felt real, like something was actually in my room with me." She nodded, all serious. "Maybe it was, or maybe you were just tired. But honestly, you seemed way too freaked out for it to be nothing." She paused, like she was thinking about how to word it. "Do you want to go back and see if anything feels off?" Just the thought of stepping back into my place made my stomach twist, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. So after we finished our coffee, we drove back to my house, both of us quiet the whole way. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, like nothing had happened at all. But the second we stepped inside, that heavy feeling was back, like the air was thicker, harder to breathe in. I looked over at her, and I could tell she felt it too. She gave a nervous laugh. "All right, yeah, this place has some serious vibes going on." We walked around, checking each room, but everything was in its place, nothing out of the ordinary. No spooky shadows, no weird taps on my shoulder, just my normal, slightly messy house. By the time we checked every corner, I started to feel a little silly. "Maybe I was just tired," I said, trying to convince both of us. But as I said it, I could still feel that last cold tap on my shoulder, like a phantom memory that wouldn't let go. My friend looked at me, like she wasn't convinced either. "Look," she said, why don't you stay at my place a couple more nights? Just until you feel better about this whole thing." I didn't need much convincing. That place just didn't feel like home right now. So I packed a bag, locked up the house, and spent the next few nights at her place. After a couple of nights crashing at my friend's house, we finally got the idea to spend one night back at mine, just to see if maybe whatever happened was, a fluke or something. I felt a little braver with her there, and besides, I couldn't just hide out forever. I had to deal with it sooner or later. So we packed up some snacks, grabbed a couple of blankets, and camped out in my living room. We kept the lights on, just in case. The night started off pretty chill. We watched some trashy TV, laughed about it, and tried to pretend like everything was fine. But around midnight, things got creepily quiet. Even the TV sounded louder than usual, like the whole house was leaning in, listening. And that's when it happened. I was mid-sentence, telling some dumb story, when my friend's face went pale. She whipped around, looking over her shoulder, eyes wide. "Did you just tap me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. My stomach dropped. I shook my head, not saying a word, just staring at her. She sat there, frozen, breathing all shallow, like she was waiting for something else to happen. And then, tap, right on her other shoulder. She jumped up so fast she almost tripped over the coffee table. I didn't have to be told twice. I was on my feet in a second, grabbing my keys, and we both bolted out the door without even looking back. We ran to her car, practically diving in, and sped back to her house, hearts pounding the whole way. Neither of us said anything at first, just sat there catching our breath. Finally, she broke the silence. "That was real," she whispered, like saying it out loud would make it sink in for both of us. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't just my imagination messing with me. There was something in that house, something that wasn't about to let me just live there in peace. I didn't go back at night again. First thing the next morning, I went back to pack up my stuff. My friend stood by, just in case, while I threw everything I could fit into my bags. I was in and out as fast as possible, barely glancing around as I took one last look at the place. I moved in with her until I found a new place, and I haven't been back since. That house, it can keep whatever's in there. I'm done with it. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you did, check out more of my videos on the screens above or visit my channel for even more. Don't forget to subscribe for future updates. Stay safe and take care.